Well, Carolina Hurricanes fans had the opportunity to see some of the top prospects in action recently with the Canes, as Scott Morrow has been filling in for the injured Dmitry Orlov, and we did see a couple of games with Ryan Suzuki. Coincidentally, both of these players are in the top five prospects for February, and I'm delighted as always to welcome in our stormTRacker insider for Carolina Hurricanes prospects, Nick Bass. Howdy, Nick.
Hello.
Hey, Nick, before we get started, I did notice recently that you have celebrated a 1 year anniversary with your Canes Prospect Substack. And I just wanted to say, hey, congrats, man, because it's a great piece of work. I love it. I think a lot of fans really enjoy the work you put in to keep us up to date on the prospects. So congrats, man.
No, thank you. Means a
No
lot.
worries. This month, not too many surprises. We're seeing a lot of the same players that show up on a regular basis, continuing their outstanding seasons. And the first on the docket, of course, at number 5 is a gentleman we've talked a lot about, bit of a mighty might. We've talked about his exciting season right from the get-go, and that's Justin Poirier. And Justin, you might recall that McKean said something really interesting about Justin. They said he was the first 17-year-old to score 50 goals in the Quebec Major Junior League. So he really tore it up his first year. And their other comment about him, I think, tells it all. And they said his shot accuracy and shooter's instincts are impeccable. He's continuing it this entire season. What can you tell all of us about Justin's February?
It was pretty standard at this point. Everybody kind of knows that he's going to score close to a goal a game. He's going to hover around, 10, 12 points every single month. I don't think he'll hit 50 goals, though. I think he's probably going to cap out really like high 40s, somewhere around 46, 47 with how many games they have left in the regular season.
Okay.
And Drakkar will probably have a nice little playoff run. I don't think they'll go super deep, just because in the queue there are some better teams. But he'll have a nice little playoff run to look forward to.
And it looks like he had an outstanding month or period because he had 7 goals and 3 assists in just 8 games played. So another outstanding month. And his numbers for the year are 43 and 37 for 80 points in just 58 games. So he's definitely putting it all together this year and having an outstanding season as we might expect. Next up on the docket, I did mention him with a cup of coffee with the Hurricanes recently. He's a player that we've talked again a lot about this year. He's continued his fine play virtually the entire season, and that's Ryan Suzuki. And the word on Suzuki from McKean's was interesting. They said if he can remain healthy, he's a very, very promising prospect. So, the challenge with Suzuki all along has been the same. Can he stay healthy? This seems like this is the first year in a while, and it's all coming together for him. What did we see from Ryan in February?
He looked basically like he has all year. He's found a really good groove as being one of the Wolves' top 6 centers, whether that be top line or second line. He's very good at what he does, and that's just being a playmaking and sometimes play driving center. He's very good at doing all the other stuff besides shooting, which is kind of weird because he does have a good shot. He just doesn't really use it that often.
Okay.
I want to say he just got 40 points yesterday, and he was the third Wolf to do it besides Robidas and Nadeau, so that's always nice to see. He's just kind of been where he is. He's been good this year, and they finally reunited Nadeau and Suzuki, and they've looked a lot better over the past few games, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that duel has been magic just about the entire season. They've just been phenomenal. And you're right, Suzuki has 40 points now, and he's continuing his fine play. And I thought, even with the Hurricanes, I didn't think he looked out of place. And so that was a good first volley for him. And hopefully we'll see some more of Ryan as he continues his development. So then we have the number 3 choice on the month for February. And this was an interesting one because it's the first time that we have a tie.
Yeah.
So Leading it off, player we've been watching with the Canes. I mentioned at the outset, Scott Morrow filling in right now for Dmitry Orlov. I think he's looked pretty good. And again, he's continuing to build his game. There's some areas that Rod Brindamore is looking for him to continue to develop. But for the most part, he's starting to show that he's going to be a serious contender with the Hurricanes next year. Again, a comment from McKean's, I think, tells a lot about Scott Morrow. They said he has sublime all direction skating ability, crisp puck skills, and a big shot from the point. And you've seen a lot of that with his work in Chicago this year. What can you tell us about Scott's February?
Yeah, definitely. At least in 2025, Morrow has kind of proved he is a number one AHL defenseman. He's kind of taken over that role. He's been in that role, but over the past 2 months, he's definitely shown that he has the ability to just run the blue line, and especially in February, he did a very good job of that. And I'm glad the organization has seen what he can do and given him some run instead of guys like Stillman or Smith instead, and just playing Scott Morrow, because he has NHL talent. He's NHL ready in my opinion. He's kind of shown that over the last few games, especially in the game against Winnipeg. He was exceptional. He was great, and he got his first NHL point because of it. And yeah, Morrow will I think at this point it's kind of an assumption he's just going to be on the NHL roster next year.
Well, and again, a beautiful assist on the Mark Jankowski goal. It was an excellent play by Scott, and he was one thing I noticed as he kind of gained confidence. He was starting to do what he does with the Chicago Wolves. He was heading into the offensive zone and hanging around, making things happen. So I think again a nice introduction with Scott for sure. And I mean his numbers are outstanding. He's got 13 goals, 26 assists for 39 points in 51 games. Not too shabby for a defenseman in his rookie year in the AHL. So he's definitely a guy that is putting it all together. And we'll continue to watch Scott closely and hopefully see some more games with Scott in a Hurricanes uniform this year. The other guy on the tie side, we love him. 5'8", 175 pounds, and just a pepper pot out there. He's making things happen every time he's on the ice. I am so impressed with this guy. Justin Robidas. Robidas, to me, is putting it all together. He paid his dues last year in the East Coast League. He's really, really making a statement this year. Comment from, again, Darren York when they drafted him. I think it's kind of interesting. He said, this kid uses his speed, uses his compete, can be a lot harder to play against, and can play bigger than his size would suggest. So, again, he plays hard, he makes things happen, and he had a number of outstanding plays that led to goals, or he scored himself in February. What can you tell us from your viewpoint, what you saw with Justin?
Yeah, he just continues to play really well, whether that be as a center, as a winger. He's just always making things happen, whether that be shorthanded. He's been very, very good shorthanded as a rookie, whether that be at even strength. The power play work is still coming along as he figures out how he really wants to work on the power play. But that's also just a statement in totality for the Wolves, who have still not put together great power plays, but they're going through it. He's currently third in rookie scoring in the entire AHL,
Wow.
and there are only guys that were drafted ahead of him besides, I want to say, Justin Ritzkovian, but it's just all guys that are either played a really long time in college or were drafted, second, third round or higher. And for Robida to have this level of success in his first year is very, very encouraging. There's definitely an NHL future for him.
Yes.
I don't know if it'll be next year, but down the line, he will definitely be a guy that plays in a good amount of NHL games.
Well, when you've watched him, what has impressed you the most as he's developed this year? I mean, he's been on quite a path. So what have you seen that's really excited you?
I would go either his ability to play center and wing, because
Okay.
that'll be a big thing versatility wise for the next level. He's been a very good center. He's been a very good winger. So having the ability to play either or is definitely going to aid him going forward, as well as just his overall compete level being as high as it is, and his effort level. Just, he never quits. If he's on the ice, he's going to keep going until he's off the ice. And that's something that's invaluable to have as a player.
And I think from what I can see, he's getting playing time in just about every situation. So has he been again power play, penalty kill? Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, he's one of Chicago's main penalty killers alongside Slavin and Brindamore,
Okay.
and he's been a very, very, very good penalty killer. Him and Dominic Fensore have combined a lot to make things happen on the penalty kill, and it's impressive to see from him, especially as a rookie.
Yeah, I did see some highlights with those guys teaming up on a goal for sure. Yeah, so outstanding numbers so far: 56 games for Robidas. He's got 14 goals, 29 assists. So that's quite impressive for this young man, and he continues to grow. And I think you're right in terms of his overall game, and we'll look forward to seeing how he continues to develop as well with Chicago. He's a guy that I agree with you totally. I think he'll be in the Canes lineup at some point in the future. Just don't know when that's going to be, but he's definitely making his case very, very clear. Now, number two on the chart, another one of your favorites as well. I know that he is having just such an outstanding season. It's easy to see why he's on the list virtually every month, and of course that's Bradley Nadeau. Nadeau, gosh, he's made the transition from college hockey in almost a seamless fashion this year. I think he's again learning his craft, and that's part of the challenge as you become a pro to get your complete game in order. But boy, he can sure score. Tell us about Bradley Nadeau.
Yeah, like recently he's slowed down recently, especially in March, and I think that's just because the Wolves have kind of shifted game styles, and maybe that's more of just like a thing. He's also played in a few different ways that he hasn't gotten used to yet, and maybe it's just a cold spell in his rookie year, which not many people are going to scoff at. But Nadeau has just been very, very good. He's aiming for probably about 25 to 30 goals, anywhere in between that range in his
Right.
rookie season. And that's the one, if he just can get better defensively more than anything else, he's a surefire NHL guy next year, I would think. It's, if not very, very close.
Yes.
He just has to continue getting better defensively, but like offensively and skating and everything like that, he's ready. He's going to be very good.
And with Nadeau, some concerns about size. How do you feel about that?
I have zero concerns about his size, even when um, that was a that was another big thing when they traded for Stan Coven, who I kind of forget is a rookie this year. It just
Yeah.
slips my mind. So technically, he's a prospect. So I guess I can kind of talk about him. But like
You can
even
talk about Stankoven, yes.
you watch a guy like Stankoven play who's not big, and
No.
it doesn't let him affect him at all. He just finds a different way to adapt. It's the same way to a lesser extent with Justin Poirier. It's the same way
Right.
with Justin Robida.
Yeah.
It's just size is not the end all be all. And with Nadeau, he doesn't it doesn't affect him. Like he'll get hit, but he's not the guy that just get hit and crumble. He's a guy that will just get hit and be like, all right, sure. I'm not worried about size at all.
Okay. So again, continues his fine scoring and of course teaming with Ryan Suzuki for quite a duo. So that's great stuff. And we'll continue to watch Bradley and we'll hope he gets to 25, 30 goals this year. That would be a nice first season in the pros for sure. The next guy, of course, at number one on the chart, he's on a lot of folks' minds these days, and clearly is a great potential Kane for the future. And of course, we're talking about Alexander Nikishin. I was digging up some interesting reports when he was drafted, some quotables as they call it, and I wanted to share those with you because I thought you'd get a kick out of them. Um, Tony Ferrari with the Hockey News said this. He said he's quite a good defender against the rush, despite his flaws in skating. So they had some concerns about his skating when he first turned pro. He excels in that area because of his willingness to close the gap, stay tight, and engage physically. His presence in the net front is top notch as well. So Ferrari saw him as a very strong defensive player, but again, looking to strengthen his skating and did not talk really about his offensive game at all. Alexander Taxman in Future Scope Hockey said his hands are those of a top line winger. Now that's interesting. when he has the puck on his stick, it seems super glued. This allows him to pull off some of the most impressive dekes and zone exits entries of all draft eligible players, regardless of position. Now, that's quite a statement. So clearly, when he was drafted, folks could see some certain skills in Alexander. Of course, he's come such a long way and had a great month again in February. What can you tell us about Alexander Nikishin?
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where you just kind of run out of words to describe a guy. And I do think there's still definite concerns about his skating just because he's not the fastest player out there, but he doesn't let that slow him down just because he's bigger than most people. So he doesn't really need to be the fastest guy out there.
Right.
Yeah, he's been SKA's lead guy. I mean, realistically for the past 3 years, but he's been their like guy in almost every situation. The only one that he really doesn't have to lead is the penalty kill, and that's good that he doesn't have to lead the penalty kill, because at that point you're probably looking at 26 minutes of ice a night, and that's kind of terrifying. So with Nikishin, he's just been really good. It feels like he's finally back in form and back to doing what he does best, which is just being the best defenseman on the ice at all whenever he steps onto it. And that's always really good. I didn't know if we were going to do it, but he did sign with a North American agency very recently.
I was going to talk about that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Quartexx. Yes. Yeah. Interesting. He's back. I think he's back on the point where he was on the power play, so I think that's a big help. His numbers were very strong: 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points. That's more what we've been expecting from Nikishin. And he's got 17 goals, 29 assists for 46 points on the year in 58 games. So he's starting to get kind of more offense, which we've seen in past seasons. The start of this year was a little bit different. I think Tony DeAngelo was part of the mix there as well. So starting to see that for sure. But yeah, a couple of things as we do the Alexander Nikishin watch. And that's a great point, Nick, on the Quartexx thing. What did you think of that when you saw it?
I think going into this year, there was already a lot of speculation, especially from North America, that he was probably going to move over. And then a little bit into the season, or at least I kind of saw more articles coming from Russian media saying, hey, he's probably leaving this season. Yeah. But I still don't put a lot of stock into anything until it actually happens, because things can change very quickly. Nothing is ever done until you see it's official. So with something like that, with seeing him sign with a North American agency, I think it gives you a really big indication on what his future plans are, as if people had doubts. But I think it kind of tells you. And it's nice that he went to Quartexx, because I made a note of it that they have a large amount of clients that work with the Hurricanes. So like Martin Chatfield.
We have several.
Carrier, a lot of guys, and Taylor Hall, who's probably going to stay for longer than this season.
And Jalen Chatfield as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice to see him go to that company, which probably means there's going to be a good relationship there. So,
well, and that's exactly the way I saw it, was that obviously Eric Tulsky has a relationship with that organization. And so he knows the key people there, so they can work together to get something done. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, of course, was the recent press conference that Eric talked about Alexander Nikishin specifically. And again, he continues to kind of play the same story, which is that the Canes are very, very interested to get Alexander here as quickly as possible. And, of course, that might mean they have to do a bit of negotiation with SKA to get an early release. But he did talk about that as well. And clearly, as you've mentioned before, rightfully so, Nick, there's the other pieces and parts of this, which is clearly getting visas and getting him over here and so on. There's a lot of logistical pieces. But I think the announcement of a North American agency on board is going to help with some of this. And I think most importantly, the contract side. So, yeah, it's all going the right way. But again, like you, until we have Alexander here, it's still a little bit of anxiety. And I mentioned this recently in some other comments I made about Alexander, that for me, the big thing is I want to see him signed on with the Hurricanes. So whether he plays this year, which I'd love to see, or next year, that's fine. But just let's get him under contract.
Yeah, I shouldn't completely mention I don't believe, because I haven't told about this before. NHL teams can't really negotiate with European teams for a release like that. It has to be just the pure European team because it's against the CBA. Because it was somebody had asked a question about if it was during the summer when Waddell was in charge and he made the comment about trying to get Nikishin over early.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked, like, hey, can't they just pay Nikishin
Right.
whatever he owes on his contract and they can get him? And I initially said yes, but I was quickly told, you can't do that. That is very much so against the CBA. So it has to be worked out between Nikishin and SKA. The Canes can't really have any
Okay.
influence in that
Okay.
whatsoever. I just want to make sure that was clarified.
Okay, well that's fine, and in that case, clearly Nikishin's going to plead his case because if he plans to come over, he's going to want to come as soon as possible. So, and my suspicion is, and I'm sure you might have thought something similar. I mean, he's in conversation with them, and the discussion is clearly: is he staying and signing a new deal with SKA, or is he going to move on? And he's been a great foot soldier for them. He's played extremely well. He's been their captain, and I think the right thing for them to do, of course, is to work with him to get that early release. So we'll have to wait
I
and see.
I caution people to expect it because and then people will go immediately and say, well, Matvey Michkov Matvey Michkov was loaned
Yeah,
out at me like within the season, like.
yeah,
And SKA, while they might have had plans for him going forward, they obviously didn't see it, so they granted him that. Nikishin is their captain.
yes, I understand.
I still just don't see them giving him an early release. I think it may be like a week, if that. I really don't. I just want to caution people to just don't expect it.
And I think that's a fair point too, Nick. I mean, we don't know. We have no idea. Some of us are hopeful, but in the same token, as I mentioned before, we'll be happy just to get him under contract at some point. So, yeah. In the meantime, we'll continue to watch his fine play. He's certainly stepping up. As you mentioned, he's really playing well right now. So we'll keep an eye on Alexander and see if he shows up again next month in the top 5 prospects as well. Okay, so that is the top 5. And now we move on to the honorable mentions. And right at the top is a guy that, of course, we've talked a lot about as well. And that's Alexander Artamonov. Again, Chris Peters said some interesting things at the draft about Artamonov. He said he's strong on his skates and able to stand up to the battles and pressure against pros in the KHL. He's not a big player. So, again, talking about him trying to play in the KHL, a very young player, seems to be having a great season. What are we seeing in Nikita in February?
Yeah, he had a much better month than he had in the past. It was definitely back to what we had seen earlier in the season when he was getting, really good time and getting all that. First hat trick in the KHL, if I'm not mistaken, this month, which obviously that's awesome. He now leads he has the U20 goal record as well. He's at
Nice.
22. I want to say he's at 22. He's at 21 or 22. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yes.
But he's that record. He'll probably finish top 5 U20 seasons all time. Yeah, he had a very, very good year, even if recently he really hasn't shown up a lot. And maybe that's due to ice time because I think he got less than 10 minutes in his most recent game, while like Andrei Krutov, who continues to play for Torpedo, got over 16. So I don't really know what's going on there. Larionov confuses me as a coach sometimes, but they're going to be the 8 seed going into their playoff matchup. They're going to play the top seed in Locomotive, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, Artamonov setting some records. Now, do we have any sense as to who some of the other under 20 record holders were for goals? Do we have any
It
sense of that?
was Kaprizov had the record
Okay.
with 20. Demidov's at 19. Michkov
Okay.
was up there. Kuznetsov was up there. And I want to
Okay.
say Eli Tolvanen was up there as well.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so these are, I mean, obviously they're recognizable players for sure. So he's in very, very good company. Yeah, again, he's had an outstanding season. You're going to have your ups and downs, as you mentioned, and it looks like he's firing on all cylinders again. So that's exciting. Um, the next couple of guys I wanted to talk about again from the Russian side, and we're seeing more and more of this in recent months. We're seeing some of these young Russian players really start to rise in the prospect side. Andrei Krutov, of course, we've talked a lot about Andrei. He was drafted this year in the seventh round. We liked what we saw with him. Darren York had this to say about Andrei Krutov, a really high quality offensive thinker. It's hard to say whether he's a better shooter or a playmaker, but he's able to see everything and make guys around him better. So these are great words from Darren York. And I noticed that Krutov is lighting it up in all the leagues he's playing in this year. He looks like he's been in the MHL, the VHL, and now the KHL. What can you tell us about Andrei?
Yeah, he's been really good in every league he's played in. He's way too good for the MHL at this point. There should be no reason he goes back there. He's been very good in the VHL, which is very awesome to see because he had never played in that league before. So it's very good to see him just become one of the better players for Torpedo or Gorky in the VHL.
Ah, okay.
And I mean, he's an 18-year-old playing in, I want to say it was either his 10th or his ninth. I want to say it was his 10th KHL game this season, and he has 4 goals in that
Yeah,
time. And
that's
that,
right.
as an 18-year-old, you don't see that very often. So that, and especially as a guy who was picked 220th overall last year, that's definitely something to be. That's definitely, if you're looking for guys who have risen up, personal rankings, especially for myself, it'll definitely be Krutov. Probably is the biggest riser because I went in not expecting a lot, and now he's one of the better players in Torpedo's system, at least youth
Yes,
wise. So it's definitely
yes.
great to see his development this season.
Yeah, and he's just 18 years old, and he's 5'11", 180 pounds. He'll probably bulk up a little bit, but he's a guy that, boy, by all measure, he's really starting to rise in the prospect group for sure. And great to hear about Krutov again. I'm getting more and more excited about Krutov every single month, so it's great to see him again. The other guy I was going to talk a little bit about is Nikita Guzlistov. Now, Guzlistov's a bit of a different story. Now, he was drafted, I think, in 2021, seventh round again. Not a big player. He checks in at 5'9", 170 pounds. He hasn't really distinguished himself that much. What are you seeing with Guzlistov?
Yeah, this month he kind of got more VHL time, which is definitely what he needs more than anything else. And with Minsk, the team he started with, he was just not going to get that because I don't think Minsk has a VHL team. I think it's Belarus League.
Ah,
So
okay.
he got moved to Admiral Vladivostok in a deal where Minsk got a really good goalie, which I thought was funny. But so with Guzlitov now, he's getting VHL time, which is definitely where he should be, and he's looked like a player that should have been drafted, and that's always great. After moving from a different club from Severstal to Minsk,
Yes.
he needed to find something and just didn't find it with Minsk, so now he's with Admiral, but now he's with Admiral's club team, and he's looked a lot better over the past few weeks. I'm interested to see how he does in the playoffs coming up, but yeah, definitely a better month for Guzlitsov, who at this point might just be a deep cut for people to try and remember.
Well, he definitely is well down on the depth chart for sure, and interesting that he's risen to some of your attention. I think that's quite a story. The Canes have drafted so many players over in Russia that sometimes we forget certain names, and certainly Guzlistov is one of them. Okay, so the next guy is kind of the other end of the spectrum. We talked about a small player in Guzlistov, but this is a big player for sure, and that's Lucas Mercuri. And of course, he's a guy that we've liked a lot. I like what I saw of him last year with UMass alongside Scott Morrow in the pre-Frozen Four games. And I like what he says. And here's a scouting report from Hockey Forecaster on Lucas, which I thought was interesting. He has excellent size and he knows how to use it to his advantage in a checking capacity. Is a solid hitter as well as good defender who can play the two-way game from the center position. And the long-range potential they have for him is big two-way center with upside. You're seeing a lot of that. I know you've talked a lot about Lucas in the past, and it sounds like he's continuing his fine play. What can you tell us about his February?
Yeah, I don't know if it was February or January, but he got moved to the top line for UMass, and their top
Okay.
line has become incredible, and he's been a big reason for that. He knows how to use his body effectively, which is always really important. Um, and going into the NCAA tournament, which I believe UMass should make at this point, with
Okay.
Hockey East being as tough as it is and their record, I know for anything, UMass plays Boston University tomorrow in the
Okay.
quarterfinals of Hockey East
Okay.
tournament. So that'll be
Okay.
something I'll probably keep my eye on just to see how he does. But he'll be if UMass does well in the tournament, in any tournament, whether that be Hockey East or the NCAA, he's going to have to be a big reason for their success. Obviously, you have guys for UMass like Michael Hrabal in net, who is a very
Right.
good goalie. You have guys like Cole O'Hara and Dan Larkmelis are the two that I know off the top of my head that are good. But Mercuri needs to be their number one center, and he has the opportunity to do that. I do know the Hurricanes have until August, like late August this season, to sign him,
Right.
and it was very interesting to note with last year where they traded Cade Weber because he wasn't going to sign with them.
Right.
They
Yes.
didn't trade Mercury's rights, so I would take that as some indication that they might have an idea that they might be able to get him signed.
Yeah, and that would be great because he's a player that you can see him kind of solidly positioned in that fourth line or even potentially third line at some point because of his size, his good skating, and his basic hockey acumen. So yeah, going to keep an eye on Lucas for sure, and I like you, I'm going to be keen to see what he does in the getting ready for the Frozen Four this year. Um, okay, wrapping it up on the for the honorable mentions, we've talked about this gentleman before as well. Another Russian forward who continues to gain more attention, of course, Alexander Perevalov. Talented winger who can manufacture offense off the flank with his ability to facilitate and create out wide or work his way or the pucks through traffic. That's Scott Wheeler in the Athletics. So, again, some good positive things said about Perevalov when he was drafted by the Canes. What can you say about his February?
Um, Ever since moving to his club now in Metallurg Novokuznetsk, he's been just a different player. I don't know what was going on in Omsk that he just didn't look good to now getting moved, and now he looks a lot better. I don't know what was going on there, but I'm glad he found that move because he's found a lot of the skill that he had when he got drafted, and he looks a
Yes.
lot better. And I'm interested to see if he continues to be a big playmaker going into their playoffs, which I believe start within the next week or two. So
Right.
interested in that for sure.
Well, for sure, and again, he was when he was drafted by the Canes, he was very highly regarded, and it's nice to see him starting to find some of his game and really show what he can do. A lot of Russian prospects we don't see much of, and for sure we're going to see more of them in the months ahead. And it's great that you're covering that group for us again, because that's definitely a key part of the future for the Hurricanes. Now, you mentioned coming up the Frozen Four, of course, is coming up in the college ranks. Are there any players as they prepare for this? You mentioned Lucas. Are there other players that we might want to keep an eye on as we head into the NCAA Frozen Four stuff?
Yeah, with it's mainly at this point because Merrimack, which had Michael Emerson, they got eliminated, so they aren't going to
Okay.
make the NCAA tournament. So his season's over. The guy that I'm probably more intrigued about is Jaden Perron with
Yeah.
North Dakota because I'm really interested to see if he can actually find the second gear that I mean, not maybe not I, but that people have been looking for. Because he stepped into the role of what Jackson Blake was. He was expected to be one of their top playmakers, top point getters, and an
Yes.
injury didn't help his season, happening
Okay.
about the later end, middle end of the year. But you want to see him take another step. And while the point production has been a little bit higher, you wanted to see it take off. You wanted to see a
Yeah.
lot closer to, over a point per game, especially for a UND team that needed to have some guys like that can't just rely on, the first round pick. Well, I guess the one first round pick on their roster that is a forward and Sasha Boyver. They needed
That's a
another
boy there.
guy, and Jaden Perron, he tried admirably, but I would love to see him take another step in the playoffs specifically to really cement something. I still think he goes back to college for at least another year
Oh,
just to
yeah.
really continue his progression. But I'm really interested to see if he can find another gear going into the I believe it's NCHC playoffs.
Okay. Well, I mean, Jaden, when he was drafted, a lot of folks had him up in the second and some even in the first round. I mean, he was very highly regarded. Canes, I think, got him in the third round. He's a guy that, again, size is the concern with Jaden, so we'll have to see how he continues to develop. But clearly, when he headed into the draft, a lot of folks thought he had just outstanding offensive skills. So, want to see more of that with North Dakota, and I definitely agree that I think he'll be back with them next year for sure. So good stuff on Jaden Prawn. And looking at some of the other the other leagues, and I know they've got playoffs coming up as well. Any players you're kind of keeping an eye on and saying, hey, I want to watch them as they head into the playoffs and make sure I'm on top of them.
I know people keep pointing to SKA and Alexander Nikishin because obviously they want to see how fast you can get over here. And like I said earlier, please don't do that. Do not. You're going to set yourself up for failure. And I don't want to see people fail. I want to see them happy. So please do not do that. You can watch SKA all you want. Just, don't be sad even when they lose. He doesn't immediately have 13 bags ready to go to get to North America. I think more importantly, Yoel Nystrom and
Ah,
Fargestad in the SHL. Fargestad was one of the better teams in the SHL this season, and I would think they have a deeper playoff run. I think they start their playoffs in a week because they moved
okay.
on to the quarterfinals immediately because they were better. He is going to be close to their number one defenseman. I don't know if that means he's going to get 23 minutes a night. He had in the past, but they've also fluctuated their minutes as they've kind of figured out what they want to do with their defense. I'm really
Yeah.
interested to see if he can take over and become that number one guy again. And I'm also intrigued with Fargestad if Noel Franzen gets in games
Ah,
because his season with Vasteras came to an end. And he had a very, for a defenseman, he was one of I think he was the top U20 point getter in the
yeah.
Hockey Allsvenskan, which again is a very tough league, especially if you're 19 years old.
Yes.
So for Franzen to do that, it's impressive. I'm interested to see if he gets in a game. I highly doubt it because again, playoff time, you're not taking a guy that's coming from a lower league and stapling him in your lineup and going go for it because that just doesn't happen. Again, people that are looking for Alexander Nikishin, it's so
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see if that happens. I doubt it, but Fargesta is definitely one I'm keeping my eye on. And then what I think people might want to look at more, if you want to look at guys that might come over after their playoff run ends, Severstal.
Yeah.
Severstal will go into the playoffs soon in the KHL, and Vladimir Grudinin still has not signed a
Ah.
contract, and
Oh man.
I don't believe he will. So I'm interested to see when Severstal goes out, he might be one of the guys that actually does get an early contract release and does come over to North America. I think that is something
Wow.
that could happen. If Tractor Chelyabinsk goes out really early, which again I highly doubt because one of the KHL's best teams. If
Right.
they go out early, Alexander Rykov might be a guy
Ah.
that might get that
Yes.
early out. Um, guys like that more than anything else, and then obviously the college. Well, first off, college hockey playoffs is just incredible in the first place. It's
Yes.
super super fun to watch. Um, but the AHL playoffs are also, I want to say, like a month away from starting,
Right.
maybe a little less than. And the Wolves should make the playoffs. So guys like I would assume Morrow and Suzuki and Nadeau and Robida are all going to get well, maybe not for Suzuki because he does have AHL playoff experience already. But with those guys who are going to play in their first AHL playoff series, I'm intrigued to see how that works out. Because, with Nadeau, does his goal scoring continue to hang around? With Robida, does he continue to do things when everything becomes, faster, when everything becomes chippier? I'm intrigued to
Right.
see that. And especially with a guy like Legault, please,
Oh,
for the love of God, do not do anything stupid. I love the kid. He knows how to fight. Please don't cross check a guy and get a penalty. Please don't. So I'm
Well, an
intrigued on a
interesting
lot of
thing
that
about
stuff.
Legault, I was looking recently at the plus minus numbers in the AHL. He's he's like in the top 10.
Yeah, it's because they finally put Fensore and Legault together, which has worked all
Yeah,
season, and they
yeah.
were like, "Oh yeah, that works," and then put them
So
back
he's having
together.
an outstanding season, and again, first year in the pros, yeah, cutting his teeth, learning on the job, and I think showing a little bit of offense as well. And I'm with you on
I
Legault. I
would
think he's a great one.
the one thing I would say is just try not to use plus minus as the end all be all for judging defensemen.
Sure.
It's a helpful measuring stick, but it's not like, oh, this guy is a great plus minus, he's the best defenseman. It's just it comes down to when and how they play more than anything else.
Sure.
So I obviously the plus minus is good, but I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, he's fast tracked. He.
Oh, I wasn't suggesting he's fast tracked. That's just a good. I just thought that was a good positive sign.
Yeah.
He's got some more work to do, but he's definitely on the right track. And a lot of folks feel like Charles Alexis Legault is going to have a future with the Canes as well. And he certainly is tracking nicely, and as a later round draft pick, amazing. So, yeah, I mean, some of those names I'm really excited about for sure. Yoel Nystrom, you've talked about him before, and he's a guy that, again, he could be over next year, right?
Sorry, who was that again? My bad.
Yoel Nystrom.
Yeah, no, he will be in North America next year.
Okay,
I figured that out. He signed his ELC last season, got
right.
loaned to Fargestat to finish out his SHL contract, and then he'll come back to North America. So he is a guy that actually, if Fargestat ends their run early, if
Yes.
that happens, he's a guy that could play AHL games this
Ah,
season.
okay. So we might see some of these folks, maybe Grudinin, maybe Nystrom,
Okay,
maybe some other players.
with
Yeah.
Russia guys, probably not, but
Yeah, I get it.
with
It's a little bit more tricky for sure.
yeah,
But
with Swedish guys, maybe.
yeah, I've been following Grudinin for a long time, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do when he comes to North America. I think he's another player that could be very, very exciting as well. So yeah, wow, lots to cover. You're going to be busy.
Always am.
Well, listen, Nick, where can folks find you?
Canes prospects on Twitter. Substack, the same thing. Developing Hurricanes is also something that I do. That's on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you like to listen to stuff.
Very nice. That's excellent and all good. I checked virtually all of it out. So yes, very, 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 very exciting and good stuff as well, Nick. And as always, great to talk with you about Carolina Hurricanes prospects right around the globe. And of course, we'll be heading back in April to talk about the top 5 prospects for March, and we'll keep an eye on a lot of these players that seem to be showing up regularly. So hopefully they'll continue their fine play, and maybe some new names will show up as well. Again, Nick, as always, I really appreciate it, and look forward to getting together with you very, very soon. And for all of you who've been watching or listening, Nick and I are delighted that you spent time with us. If you like this episode, please press the like button. If you have comments or you have things you'd like to say to us or just questions, whatever, please leave those in the comment section down below. Nick and I will try to respond as quickly as possible. And if you'd like to be alerted of future episodes of the top 5 prospects of the month or stormTRacker in general, please press the subscribe button and the bell, and you'll be alerted just as soon as those are available. As always, Nick and I are delighted you spent time with us today, and we'll look forward to getting together with you real soon right here on stormTRacker.